Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs. The oldest chose to build his house out of thatch, to save time for playing the flute. The second chose to build his house out of sticks, and occasionally played the violin. The third chose to build his house out of bricks. He wanted to build a strong and beautiful house. He shoveled mud and laid bricks. A few days later, the oldest's house was finished. From the outside, it looked like a straw house. There were chairs and grass in front of the door. The second's house was also finished. It's a wooden house. The eldest played the flute and called for the second. They played together and went to look for the third. At that moment, they saw San busy on the roof. Apparently, he hadn't finished his house yet. They laughed at him for wasting his time on it. But Lao San said, "My house can protect me from the big bad wolf." They laughed and laughed, but they didn't know the danger was already upon them. The big bad wolf was hungry, spotted the two playing in the woods. He saw the food in front of him and drooled all over the place. At that moment, they also found the wolf behind the tree. They were so scared that they fled in a hurry. They ran to their houses and closed the doors. The wolf ran to the oldest house and pushed and knocked on it. There was no change in the house, so he said to the boss inside the house, "You'd better come out obediently. Don't force me to do anything." Seeing that the boss didn't make a move, the big bad wolf took a few steps back. He blew on the house. The grass house was shattered in an instant. Frightened, the boss let go of the pillar and ran towards the second's house. They quickly closed the door behind them. They hid under the quilt and shivered. The big bad wolf pushed and tugged at the wooden door, but to no avail. Apparently, the second's wooden house was stronger. The big bad wolf had a plan. He said to the two of them inside the house, "The house is too strong. I give up." Then he deliberately made loud footsteps. He went to hide behind the fence outside the house. Hearing no movement outside, they danced around the house. Luckily, they didn't go outside. The big bad wolf had another plan. He disguised himself as a sheep and knocked on the door again. Hearing the knocking, the two brothers were so scared that they hid under the quilt again and asked who was at the door. The big bad wolf said, "I'm a little sheep. Can you let me in?" They said in unison, "No, you think you can fool us?" The big bad wolf was caught in the act. Immediately jumped out of the cradle and angrily told them to open the door. Then he did the same thing again. He blew hard on the house, and finally the wooden house was defeated. The two men in the house looked around. They panicked and ran towards Lao San's house. He followed them to the third house. He rushed into the brick house and dived under the bed. Lao San hurriedly closed the door of the house, turned around and calmed them down, and criticized them both. "You can't be lazy in building a house. The house has to be solid. You only care about having fun. Luckily, we're safe now." When the third one finished speaking, he played the piano. The two brothers got out from under the bed. Before they could rejoice, there was another knock on the door. The brothers went under the bed again. Bravely, Lao San went up to them and asked, "Who are you?" The big bad wolf, disguised as a merchant, replied, "I'd like to recommend our brushes. Please open the door." Lao San carefully opened the door a small crack. He reached for the brush. The big bad wolf took the opportunity to put his hand inside. Old 3 hit the big bad wolf's hand hard with the brush in his hand, poking out from the observation port of the room door, and hit him on the head. He yelled and screamed in pain. The big bad wolf, annoyed, took off his costume and said to the 3 little pigs in the house, "You've brought this on yourselves. I'm going to destroy this house right now." Then he took a deep breath and blew hard at the house, but it didn't help. So he tried a few more times, and the house remained intact. It's true that the strongest house is the one made of bricks. By now, the big bad wolf was out of breath. Seeing that he couldn't break the house, he tugged on the door, but it didn't help. At that moment, the big bad wolf found the chimney on the roof. Excitedly, he jumped up to the roof, thinking this was the best way to get into the house, but he didn't realize what was waiting for him under the chimney was a pot full of boiling water. In order to raise the temperature of the water, boss even poured cooking oil from the table into the pot. Everything was ready. At that moment, the big bad wolf climbed into the chimney. He slipped down the pipe and into the pot, but he didn't realize that his ass was in the boiling water. But he soon realized what he was in for, and with a leap of faith, up the chimney and into the air, and landed hard on the ground, scalded by the boiling water. The big bad wolf ran in circles in pain, and rubbing his buttocks on the ground, and fled into the distance.